So, I got a really interesting comment on one of my videos, and the person asked what my thoughts were about the Titans. I think so. They kind of like were giving, their interpretation of the whole Titan mythology, and, asked what I thought. And I was going to comment, but I figured I'd make an entire video about it. Yes, I believe that those beings existed and still exist. There are different interpretations of them throughout history, or mythology, as they try to call it, pawn it off on us. Yeah, and it's funny because like you always have the stories of these ruling deities, and then there's like these beings they just cannot control. Like they can't do anything with them. They're these primordial forces of chaos or destruction, and they just can't. And you get that with the Greeks, the whole Greek pantheon, and the whole thing with Kronos, and that section of them being the Titans, and they had to imprison them because they were just and you get the same thing with the Sumerian story of Tiamat being this primordial dragon and being slain by, I believe it was Marduk, and actually even before that, like there's like this whole story of like the Anunnaki going to war with not only Tiamat but like Tiamat's children. They consider Tiamat's children to be these like abominations, like these, a lot of them were like serpents and dragons and all these weird things that they were fighting. And Tiamat and her mate, who I believe was called Kingu, were just kind of spawning these creatures, and they went to war with the Anunnaki, which is so funny because I believe that Tiamat was the mother of, like, it's this insane, like, family dynamic thing, because, they came from Tiamat, but then they're, like, fighting Tiamat and all of her, quote-unquote, abominations. And then, of course, in the story, Marduk slays Tiamat, and that's their account of how the earth was created. But there's a lot of truth in those stories. I do believe that you had these beings, a lot of these beings that were so powerful that the ruling powers really couldn't do anything with them. They couldn't be subjugated, so they had to imprison them. And, draw whatever conclusions you'd like from that. But I think that it's it's talked about in the previous examples that I was given, or that I just gave, and it was also talked about a lot. I mean, Lovecraft wrote insane amounts about beings like that, and I firmly believe, it's my own personal opinion, but I believe that Lovecraft was less of a writer and more of a channel. If he wasn't a channel, he was like a member of one of these like mystery school people, like secret societies that were trying to like push knowledge into the masses. I don't know really which one. It's kind of hard when you like look at Lovecraft's life, because like he didn't have a good life. He was kind of like, he kind of had a shitty life, especially at the later end of it. Like people didn't like flock to his work, or really, he wasn't really discovered by the masses, quote unquote, until after his death. I mean, how he died was crazy. I mean, he basically died from medical neglect, so we were told. He lived in complete poverty, especially like at the later end of his life, and he was writing these stories for pennies. So that doesn't really strike me as like he wasn't a C.S. Lewis, he wasn't a Tolkien, he wasn't a he didn't have, he wasn't. Another kind of similar story was who I also believe was a channel, Robert E. Howard. Robert E. Howard, I believe personally the whole Conan story, I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent, but just stay with me. I believe the whole Conan story and all that, all channeled stuff. All stuff that he got from, somebody was talking to Robert E. Howard. It's like I believe somebody was talking to Lovecraft. And on that point, there is a great story. Oh my God. It is, Robert E. Howard wrote it. And I feel like everybody should, like, if you if you're in a like truth and like you want some like serious knowledge, oh man, it's a Kull the Conqueror story, and it takes place around the fall of Atlantis, but it's about these shape-shifting serpent people who were like infiltrating all aspects. It's straight up the story from the Emerald Tablets that Thoth talks about, and they're infiltrating all aspects of society. And the only way humans could tell who was who was there was a specific word, a phrase, a password they would use, and the serpents couldn't pronounce it. And whenever a serpent would try to pronounce it, they would like F up, or they would start to like the illusion would start to falter, and then they were just like taking the heads of all these serpents. Really good story. Man, I'll have to, if I can find like a public domain audiobook version of it, I will definitely upload that as soon as I can. But that's back to Lovecraft. Lovecraft talked about these eldritch beings, as he called them, which I feel were just very similar to the Titans. You had beings like Cthulhu, who was this most people are aware of that character, that being, trapped under the ocean, imprisoned, in this like construction, this fortified construction at the bottom of the ocean. This thing was massive, huge. All these different beings, Yog-Sothoth, Dagon, all these different beings that Lovecraft wrote about were like crazy, like powerful old things that were always trying to break through over here and destroy everything. And that's basically like what 90% of his stories were about. So I think it's very similar to the whole thing with the Titans and so on and so forth. I believe that at this point, some of those, if not a lot of those creatures are breaking out now. We're seeing, because again, these veils are starting to falter and fail, and I think a lot of the systems of imprisonment are starting to falter. Antarctica is a place that I would look into, if you haven't already. Lovecraft wrote about Antarctica a lot, especially in his book, his short story, At the Mountains of Madness, where these scientists discover the frozen remains of these weird creatures and, this crazy civilization, all that. There's a lot of stuff there frozen under the ice. And I also believe that there is a gate in Antarctica. If that structure of land is close to what we've been told, I believe there's a gate there that leads somewhere out of this place. And I believe there's like 4 gates that I was told about. 4 gates. And Antarctica is one of them. I feel like that gate doesn't lead to anywhere nice, though. And I think that the things around it are kind of like indicative of that. But there's a lot of stuff frozen in the ice. Even I've Google Earthed it, and I've seen like weird stuff frozen under the ice and stuff thawing out, just crazy stuff, But that's yeah, I would suggest you do that research on your own. But yeah, Lovecraft talked about that, and I believe that a lot of these beings are breaking out now, if not being set free, for the big show that's going down. 'Cause, sometimes, man, I've seen things in storms. I've seen just crazy stuff. There are things happening now, even like with natural disasters. And if you look really close, like some of these like earthquakes, some of these like volcanic eruptions, there are creatures inside these things as they're coming. I'm talking about like massive creatures that are like using these eruptions and explosions for cover. It's pretty crazy. Oh yeah, people are blowing. That's a thing that's never happened before. But anyway, yeah. So I hope that answers your question. That was a really good question, and yeah, that's my thoughts on the Titans. I think that, and again, it's very funny because again, these are creatures and beings that like even the quote unquote like bad guys are afraid of because they can't control them. They destroy everything. they don't give a shit. They destroy everything. You know, it was just really funny. Like, if you read into the Lovecraft stories, it's so funny because, like, you have all these, like, weird cults that worship these, in the Lovecraft stories, you had, like, quote-unquote, the elder gods, and then you had, like, the old things, the old ones that were, like, those, you know, titans, the eldritch abominations and stuff that predated the old gods. And, you had people that were, like, worshiping these things, and it's just like, really, dude? Like, you know, once it comes through, it's going to destroy everything. And that was always the funny part. Like, it's gonna wipe you out. It's not gonna, like, shake your hand and say, hey, man, thanks for setting me free out of, you know, the Phantom Zone. Let's get lunch. No, it's gonna destroy everything. I just think that's hilarious. But, you know, entire cults and religions based on a creature that once it gets through, you're all dead. Anyway, that's my rant. I will talk to you guys later. Peace.